All right, I've got the little spinning circle. That means we're back with another money move. So, how you doing, Wendy?
Doing good. A little rainy here today, but that's all right.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. It's a crazy time of year. We had like this spring, then it false spring, I guess is what they call it. Then it goes back to winter, then it gets sloppy, and it's just like I
Yeah.
can't wait for warm weather. I'm ready for the heat. I'm ready for some sunshine, and I'm ready to get
Heat.
out in the sun. So, but everything's not rainbows and lollipops right now. We're going to talk about something today that may be kind of curious in your mind too. We're going to talk about the banks and what's going on with Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank, and maybe a few others on the radar. So, if you're concerned about what this means to you, your 401k, your money, you definitely want to listen in. Do us a favor, click that little subscribe button down below and the like button, whatever you've got in front of you on your platform, and share it and let everybody know, hey, they're getting ready to talk about this bank failure stuff
Yep.
on blackswanmoney.com. We'll get started in just a second. So Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank, does that mean your bank's going to fail? So I'm sure you followed this. You've heard about this stuff, right?
Yeah. Been following it. Been following, some of the stuff that's not put out there very publicly of the conversations. I don't know, in Senate, Congress. I don't really know which one, where it's happening exactly. But yeah, it's interesting. It's a big deal.
It is. A lot of people are concerned. You look at the banks and who they are. A lot of people are concerned, okay, is this going to be, another 2008 where banks start just collapsing and falling? And it was a lot more mortgage companies with some banks mixed in 2008. But, are we headed for another one? Is my bank going to fail? And you've got to look at who the primary client of the bank is. So SVB, for example, Silicon Valley Bank, they're based out of California. Their primary client was, IT, technology, startups, things like that. So a lot of money coming in, and the whole rigmarole, if you will, around it is the whole FDIC insurance. This, oh my gosh, all these accounts are going to go in. Well, these weren't regular people. These weren't like mom and pop people. These weren't, grandma and grandpa with their little account. Most banks out there, and I think, there's been some news on this as well. Most banks out there, 80+% of their clients, of their depositors, are under that $250,000 threshold, right? 20% of your higher end clients and things like that, but it's usually pretty stable. So, because this bank failed, they got into some bad strategies, because what's going on in the bond market and things like that, it caused some issues internally on their balance sheet. And the FDIC, the government, the Fed came in and said, hey, you guys aren't meeting your requirements, and we're going to come in and take over. So it isn't a situation where, it's going to create issues with your local credit union, which is under a whole different program. Credit unions, by the way, are not FDIC insured. They are NCUA insured. Very similar program, stable as can be. I love credit unions, and they also love their clients, as opposed to treating them as a number, not giving any specific endorsements, but just personal experience. And that's why I put my money in a credit union. But if you look at the local banks and things like that, your local bank isn't going to be impacted or collapse because of the domino effect from SVB. Those clients are completely different than most banks happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of thought like this doesn't affect, I don't have $250,000 in one bank, right? In any bank. So I'm like, okay, this doesn't affect me. But one of the things that they're talking about that I think could affect the smaller banks, though, is if there are large depositors, right, they move their money out of those smaller banks, right? They're going to move into bigger banks that are going to be taken care of by the government, which I don't know if that'll affect it or not, but.
Yeah. And that's what she's alluding to, folks, is there's talk, Yellen and the Fed, Pamela Yellen and the Fed are talking about going ahead and insuring those large depositors because it's going to create an economy failure, which is total BS, right? If one bank can cause the collapse of the U.S. monetary system, we've got a lot bigger troubles, and we need to start looking at what's going on at the Fed. And I'm just going to say that, Ron Paul, still love you, guy, audit the Fed. But you look at what's going on with the banks and things like that, and who are those depositors, right? There's a lot of influencers there, and I'm not talking TikTok influencers. I'm talking influential people with a lot of money. You're also talking some foreign governments, and we know this. How can I say this without disappearing? This administration is heavy relations with certain foreign governments, so we'll just leave it at that. And they put a lot of money in these banks, and so that becomes a question. Okay, is this just another bailout to take care of the people who have been taking care of them? And in my opinion, the answer is yes. And I'm entitled to my opinion, so there it is. I'm not naming names or anything like that. But the big concern is, what about you and I and the little guy? And that goes back to what you were saying. So what's going to happen? The Fed comes in and bails out, these large depositors. Large depositors at the smaller bank that are at risk are going, okay, why wouldn't I want to take my money and put it in one of these big banks if the government's going to insure it or going to back it up? Because it's not insured. If it's, they only insure up to 250,000. So they're just going to cover it, if you will. And so what the big concern is now you're going to have a run of large depositors from smaller community banks, and community banks are there for the community, right? Big government does not like a bunch of small community banks. And the reason is they can't control them all. They have control over them. Don't get me wrong. But it's much easier to centralize everything, because it's centralized, the easier it is to control it. And we already know that the large banks, JP Morgan, B of A, things like that, are already testing CBDC, the central bank digital currency. It's live right now in New York, not Saturday Night Live. It's not some skit, although, you might think that with the government. But it's looking at, what's going on with the future of money, and why would they do this? Why do you think they would want to enable this?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's, people can call it a conspiracy theory, but whatever, it's all happening. It's not a theory anymore. The ultimate goal is to control our currency and the way we spend our money, period, right? The ultimate thing is control right now. And so the central bank digital currency, they're trying to implement, and this is just all a way to create that. It's all a way to push us towards feeling safe, just like, man, go back to, right, masks are safe or whatever. We want to feel safe, and the government's saving us by implementing this digital currency, when really the whole objective is, it comes down to control. Believe what you want. That's the friggin' truth. I mean, I'm convinced of that 100%, and so are most people. And it comes down to that control. So then when there's a digital currency that's not, we have nothing backed by gold, or not that we have that now, but they have ultimate control. What happened in Canada when people are uprising against the government? They shut off their bank accounts.
Yep. They froze their money.
Froze their money. And when we have digital currency and that's all we have, I mean, who's to say that they don't decide you don't get your money if you don't vote right, act right? Who knows, right?
Well, and that's where it's headed. I mean, it's called social scoring, right? And that's, China already has it in place. Well, this is the U.S. That would never happen here. Wake up, folks. Wake up, America. This is what's going on. I mean, the government is trying to push us away from cash. That's why, you look at the SVB and things like that, they go in and bail it out. Well, now what's happening is that there's going to be an exodus of community bank depositors, large depositors, right? Which is the backbone of lending in local communities and things like that. And so then all of a sudden that goes into, okay, now we've got it centralized. These big banks are already on board with the digital currency. They're already testing it for the government. Okay. So then there'll be some other trigger event to get us to switch to or from currency, cash, where cash is king, and they're trying to destroy it, into the crypto digital currency. And then you've got the, Gen Z is already embracing it because of, Bitcoin and all these other currencies out there. Well, what happens when all of a sudden we say, hey, that's great, but you can't spend that anymore. You have to convert it to US digital currency if you want to spend it. And that's a situation where, well, why would they do that? Well, they've already done that with the petrodollar. In order to buy oil in Saudi, all these countries had to convert their currency to the US dollar to buy oil from the Saudis. Now that's falling apart, so the US is looking for some kind of backup. And it's like you said, it seems like some conspiracy theory way, tinfoil hat, but I'm saying this is a reality that's going on right now, and this is the path we're headed down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's scary when you think of it, because when that happens, the transaction that used to be private between you and I, giving you cash to mow my yard or whatever the case may be, that's and a lot of people, the gray economy, that's that economy that exists where it's cash only, and we all know what we're talking about here, right? The government's trying to stop that. Why? So they can control it and tax it.
Mm-hmm.
You look at what Biden administration, one of the first things they did was came out with the whole Venmo and Zelle and all that. Any transactions over $600 have to be reported now. And that's going to continue to happen. And they're trying to find ways to squeeze more money out of the middle class. And this is where, wake up, and start carrying cash. I mean, it's almost like I just want to carry cash and only pay cash. You had people that stopped taking money during COVID. That is illegal. For one, it's against federal law to accept cash. Right on the dollar bill, it says accepted for all, legal tender for all debts. And so that to me is like, what is going on? I feel like I'm living in bizarro world right now.
And to your point about like the taxes. So one thing I heard yesterday is that with these banks, the bailout, I don't know what to call it, but that they're doing for like Silicon Valley Bank, they're saying they're not going to affect the taxpayers. And with that, but they're going to actually up the fees of the smaller banks. The banks are going to pay. So the banks are going to pay to help bail out that bank. So then again, you have that ripple effect of you're basically destroying the smaller banks.
No, the banks are not going to pay. Okay. The banks, how do they make their money? They make their money from fees to the customers, you and I.
Right.
And that's the thing that's just like, and it's almost, it's like they believe this stuff. They believe what they're actually saying. It's like, I'm just blown away by the mentality we've got, as far as running our economic system in the United States. It's like, just if you want to take it over, just say, this is what we're doing and this is why, right? Yeah. Instead of trying to sneaky stuff and we're going to take care of our own. And, oh, by the way, what can we take off top? It's amazing to me the number of politicians that come into office and they're like average Joe when it comes to wealthy. Don't get me wrong. They're not middle class by any means. And then they walk out of office multimillionaires. How is that possible in public service? We all know how it's possible, right? And so I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but I just, to go back to the original statement, SVB, that in and of itself is not going to cause your community bank to fail. Okay. What happened there is not your bank, is not my bank. It's something that, okay, now what's going to trigger it though, is what the government is doing as a result of it. They're taking care of their own, right? They're going in and bailing this. And you cannot convince me that Silicon Valley Bank is going to cause the collapse of the economic system in the United States. Won't happen. This is another bailout using tax dollars to make it happen. And I don't buy it for 1 second, and neither should you, that the middle class, the U.S. citizen, is not going to end up paying for this. We will end up paying it one way or the other, either through use of our tax dollars or additional fees at the community bank, which again is going to cause customers to go to larger banks because they can get lower costs for the simple fact that they've got more clients. That's the big bank stuff. So I don't know. There you go. I feel like I'm on a rampage this morning. I'm just, I'm just blown away by this stuff.
Yeah. And it's important to know it. Like there's no real solution we're bringing today, right? But it's important to know what's happening, what's going on. And we've got to vote in the right people. We've got to be actively involved I used to take the mindset of oh, God appoints the right people and I sit back and, let life happen. And the more I've matured, no, we have to be active in knowledge and understanding so we can participate. This is our country.
They work for us. They work for us.
And we need to start treating it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
There's going to come a time, I believe, that it's we stand up or we get taken over. I mean, and whatever that looks like, right? I'm not saying it's but we can't stand up if we don't have the knowledge right? If we don't know what's happening, if we don't
No, and
know.
that's exactly right. That's educate yourself. And that's what we're trying to do with this, right? The whole point of Black Swan Money is to help people educate themselves on money so they can be better prepared for the storms. Well, guys, we've got a big storm coming in, and there is actually something you can do. Support your community bank, right? Take your money out of the big bank, put it in the community bank. Most of us out there, we're under $250,000 in bank deposit, right? So take your money, go support your local community bank, or go support your local credit union. All the ATMs work together now, so it's not like you got this big inconvenience from doing that. But vote with your feet. Show what you show your opinion with your feet, and take back control. And if we don't, we keep this blowing it off because we got 2,000 channels, or we got my smartphone that I've got my face buried in 24/7. Look around, see what's going on, look what's going to happen 2 or 3 steps ahead, and take action now, or there's going to be a time where it's too late, right? And this may seem small, but it's actually not. This is, again, part of the big, hey, we want to go to the cryptos current. And a lot of you are thinking, okay, hey, that's cool, this, that, or the other. And don't get me wrong, it is when it's like Bitcoin, Ethereum, all these different options that I have that I get to choose. But if we keep going down the road we're going to go down, I guarantee one of the next steps is to make it illegal, or at least very difficult, to use those other currencies and have to convert it to the central bank digital coin. That's what I project is going to happen. And again, my opinion, I could be totally wrong. I'd love to hear your comments down below on what you think about all this and what's going on, and good, bad, or different, whatever. Love to hear your opinion. Put your comments down below. Check out our YouTube channel. Please do us a favor, subscribe on this, and we'd love to hear from you. And we'll have some more information next week. So thanks, everybody. Wendy, thanks as always for being here, and you guys are awesome. And we'll see you next week, every Tuesday, 10 a.m.